They found handprints and drawings that are between 35,000 and 40,000 years old at a minimum. They could be even older.
Something inside this cave was sealed away for 40,000 years. Not buried by collapse, not hidden by nature, sealed intentionally. For 9 years, archaeologists excavated a forgotten chamber beneath the cliffs near the Mediterranean. When they finally broke through the ancient barrier, they found something terrifying. Deep claw marks carved into solid limestone from the inside. Bones of predators gathered in complete darkness. A mysterious shell placed carefully at the very back of the chamber, like an offering. Whoever sealed this cave never intended for it to be opened again. The deeper researchers went, the more impossible the discoveries became. Because this was not just an ancient shelter. This cave contains evidence that ritual behavior, symbolic belief, and the roots of human spirituality began long before civilization.
Discoveries like this are just pushing the envelope of what we know about ancient humans, and this discovery is certainly one of the big ones.
Long before scripture, and long before the earliest biblical histories were ever written. The chamber beneath the stone. Inside Vanguard Cave in Gibraltar, archaeologists led by Clive Finlayson spent nearly a decade excavating one of the deepest sections of the cave system. Progress was painfully slow. Every layer of sediment was removed by hand, every fragment studied carefully. Then, everything stopped. Buried deep inside the passage was a dense wall of compacted ancient sand with no geological reason to exist there. At first, researchers believed it may have shifted naturally. Testing revealed something shocking. The sand had remained untouched for at least 40,000 years. It had been placed there deliberately. Someone had carried sand deep into the cave and sealed the chamber from the outside. Whatever was behind it had remained isolated since before recorded history even existed. When archaeologists finally removed the barrier, cold, stale air escaped from the darkness, carrying the unmistakable scent of biological material trapped in complete stillness for tens of thousands of years. Then they saw the walls. Deep gouge marks carved directly into the limestone. Not surface scratches, not erosion. Claw marks. Long, repeated grooves driven violently into solid rock. Every single mark had been made from the inside. Whatever created them had not been trying to enter the chamber. It had been trying to escape. Then came the bones. Lynx, spotted hyena, griffin vultures, predators that should never naturally share the same enclosed space. The discovery made no sense. Until researchers realized the animals had likely been brought there intentionally. Not for survival, not for food, for something else. Something symbolic, something ritualistic. That was the moment the cave stopped feeling like an ancient shelter and started feeling intentional. Then, archaeologists found the object that changed the entire meaning of the chamber. Waiting silently at the deepest point of the darkness was a single shell. The object hidden in the darkness. The shell was a whelk from the Mediterranean shoreline. It could not have arrived there naturally. Someone had carried it from the sea, walked deep into the darkness, and placed it carefully at the furthest possible point inside the sealed chamber. Because of the chamber's age, the people who placed it there could only have been Neanderthals. That single discovery shattered one of the oldest assumptions in archaeology. For generations, Neanderthals were portrayed as primitive creatures incapable of symbolic thought or spiritual behavior. But this shell suggested something completely different. At Neanderthal sites across Europe, similar shells have been found containing traces of red ochre pigment, a mineral used for decoration, symbolic markings, and ritual expression. The shell itself functioned perfectly as a container for pigment, which meant the people inside this cave were not simply surviving, they were creating meaning. And in a chamber sealed from the outside world, hidden in total darkness, That meaning may have carried sacred importance. The deeper archaeologists went, the less this place felt like a shelter, and the more it resembled a hidden ritual chamber. Then, the discoveries became even harder to explain. Beneath the chamber floor, researchers uncovered a 60,000-year-old engineered hearth designed to produce adhesive tar through controlled heating. This was not survival instinct. It was engineered knowledge. Controlled heat, refined construction, repeatable results. The process worked consistently across generations. Meaning knowledge was being taught, improved, and deliberately preserved over time. These people understood processes sophisticated enough to be repeated and refined long before the first kingdoms or temples appeared in the ancient world. Then researchers uncovered something even more unsettling: symbols carved into stone in complete darkness. The symbols in the dark. Inside nearby Gorham's cave, researchers discovered a geometric engraving carved directly into limestone bedrock. Dating confirmed it was older than 39,000 years, before modern humans had reached this region of Europe. The engraving required at least 54 deliberate strokes, every line intentional, every movement planned beforehand. And the carving existed in a section of the cave where natural sunlight never reaches, which meant whoever created it either worked by artificial light or knew the design well enough to carve it perfectly in darkness. Both possibilities destroyed the old image of Neanderthals completely, because symbols change everything. Symbols mean memory, meaning, abstraction, belief. The deeper archaeologists looked, the more evidence pointed towards something even more haunting: the dead. Across Europe, archaeologists uncovered Neanderthal burials showing extraordinary ritual care and symbolic intention. At Shanidar Cave, researchers discovered a Neanderthal buried roughly 60,000 years ago, surrounded by pollen from flowering plants intentionally carried into the cave. Flowers, placed beside the dead. The body had been arranged carefully, arms folded across the chest, legs positioned deliberately, placed inside a prepared grave. At other burial sites, red ochre pigment had been applied directly onto bones. Animal remains were positioned beside the dead, like offerings. None of this improved survival. None of it served practical need. It served meaning. This was not random survival behavior. It was deliberate, symbolic action. They buried their dead with ceremony, marked bodies with color, carried offerings into darkness, and sealed sacred spaces beneath stone. These ancient humans appear to have believed something existed beyond death itself. And suddenly, the cave no longer feels like a primitive shelter. It feels sacred. A hidden chamber sealed away before recorded religion, before written scripture, before the earliest biblical civilizations ever emerged. That is why these discoveries feel so unsettling. Not because they reveal something alien, but because they reveal something deeply familiar: the need to mourn, the need to create meaning, the need to believe death is not the end. For more than a century, history taught us that spirituality, ritual, and symbolic belief began with civilization. But hidden inside this sealed cave was evidence that those instincts may have existed long before the first temples, long before the first priests, and long before history remembered our names. Then these people vanished. As modern humans spread across Europe, Neanderthal populations slowly disappeared region by region. Yet today, every non-African human still carries between 1% and 4% Neanderthal DNA. Part of them survived inside us. But their world, their rituals, symbols, beliefs, and knowledge disappeared into silence. And somewhere inside that darkness, beneath the symbols, the offerings, and the buried rituals, the claw marks still remain carved into the stone. A final trace left behind by the people who sealed this chamber 40,000 years ago. People who believed something inside mattered enough to hide forever. Whatever happened inside this chamber, the people who sealed it clearly believed it should never be disturbed again. For 40,000 years, the chamber beneath Vanguard Cave remained sealed beneath the stone. When archaeologists finally opened it, they did not uncover treasure. They uncovered evidence that the roots of ritual, symbolism, and spiritual consciousness may reach far deeper into human history than anyone ever imagined. Maybe the first sacred spaces on Earth were never temples. Maybe they were caves hidden in darkness. And whatever these people believed inside this chamber, they believed it enough to seal it away from the world forever, sealed beneath stone. And after 40,000 years in darkness, the chamber finally opened again.